So I do have a really special guest with me today. My 5-week-old daughter is here to watch the presentation, and you wouldn't believe it, but she is a precocious JavaScript developer at 5 years old. It's quite amazing. But I think we're waiting for them to come streaming in. So, like I said, my name is Spencer Jones. I am a software developer at Solution Street in Herndon, Virginia. One of the sponsors for today's event. We've got a booth out front. And we are always looking for great people, especially JavaScript devs. So if you're looking for work, do stop by the booth and say hi. And I have a t-shirt to throw out, and here's how we're going to do it. Robbie? If you contribute to or maintain an open source project and contribute to just at least one commit on any open source project, highest density of hands, I'm launching it in your direction, and hopefully somebody gets it. All right, we got a lot of hands there. Well done, well done. Enjoy that. We need proof, folks. Proof. All right. Here's what I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to talk about what is Gun. Anybody heard of Gun before? Anybody using Gun? You folks. All right. I know there's one fellow here that I see in the community running around. So we're going to talk about what is Gun. We're going to talk about graphs. At this point, I'm going to break, and we're going to do a demo. Just get to see Gun in action. And actually, we're going to integrate Gun with the Vue app, which is a lot of fun since the last talk was on Vue. A lot of power in that integration. And then we'll flip back to do some slides and talk about offline first, how Gun does real-time, and how it's decentralized. So what is Gun? Gun is a real-time, decentralized, offline-first graph database engine. That is a whole bunch of jargon. By the end of this presentation, I think that'll make sense. It's all fairly simple concepts once we break it down. It's also an open source JavaScript library. It's available on NPM and GitHub. And there's its website if you want to check that out. So since it is open source, you can contribute to it. I've been able to contribute this year, and it's a fun community to be a part of if you're looking for an open source project to contribute to. It's created by this fellow, Mark Nadal, who not only is super nice, but he's quite a maverick JavaScript developer. So let's talk about graphs and graphs in Gun. So just to be clear, we're not talking about this kind of graph, or this kind of graphs, or any other nicely food-named graphs. We're talking more about the mathematical sense of graphs. I'm going to make a quick, non-academic tour of graphs, just so we're all on the same page. We'll consider the basic building block of Gun of a graph to be a vertex or a node. Let's think of it something like a JSON object or a JavaScript object. You've got keys and you've got values. But you'll notice that third key there, instead of actually holding a value, I'm representing with a little ASCII arrow a relationship to another node. So that employees node isn't nested underneath here, but it lives out on its own. And this is drawing a relationship to it. So if we zoom out here on our graph just a little bit, you can imagine here where there is another node called the employees node that has a number of references to other nodes within the graph. In fact, all it is just a list of references to other nodes. In Gun, we're going to refer to this as a set. There's a method called set in the API, which adds items to this sort of node. Okay? So if we're zooming out here, and by this point you get the idea, we're kind of drawing the relationships of something like a consulting firm that I work for, where we've got employees and projects, and you've got a number of projects, a number of employees. The employees work on various projects. Sometimes employees work on multiple projects. You can see here how nodes and relationships are just kind of drawn free form. So we continue zooming out. You can imagine, maybe we've got multiple firms that we're putting into our graph here. So this is a fairly trivial example, but you can imagine where your graph starts to look something like this. And let's imagine you could actually find out all of the projects that the consulting firms in Northern Virginia are working on and the tech that they're using. And a graph would allow you to traverse those relationships and ask questions like, for all the companies using JavaScript, we want to know the projects that they're on and the project manager, and you could start traversing those relationships. So this is the data structure that Gun uses, that the database itself uses. So all we mean when we say that Gun is a graph database means that Gun can create, traverse, and read, update data in this format. Right? So nothing real fancy there. So at this point, I'm going to turn and do a demo and actually see Gun in action, see how easy it is to use. And I do just want to say, if you're primarily a front-end dev, and at this point you're about like, okay, database, I'm getting ready to tune out. That's like for the back-end folks. I don't really want to worry about that. What I do want to say is with a little bit of Node on a back end, you can create some really powerful distributed systems using just plain JavaScript. So Gun actually is a really powerful tool to do stuff like that, even if you're just primarily a front-end JavaScript dev. What we're going to do, or mimic, is create an ad hoc mesh network, which looks a little something like this. So we're going to create Gun servers in DC, London, and Sydney, and be able to sync data in real time between each of these instances. So we'll start off, create DC, then we'll get London and DC talking to one another. After that, we'll get Sydney in the mix there and sync up the data. All right, so let's break here. All of the code for this presentation is available on my GitHub page. I'll have a link to that at the end of the presentation. So if you do want to check it out, it will be available there. You see, I've got just two folders here. Got a server folder and a view folder. In this server directory, all I've done prior to this is an npm init to get a package.json, and then I did a yarn add gun to get the most recent version of Gun. I'm not doing something wrong, am I? All right. Alarm. Time's up. So that's all I've done before this. What we need to do to create a Gun server, which a Gun server would be a fully functioning graph database that's also able to serve as a hub and accept incoming connections from other Gun instances, be they in the browser or other servers. It's able to store the data and then broadcast real-time updates. So what's going on here? First, we're going to grab the create server method off the HTTP module so that we can create an HTTP server, which we do right here. It's a very uninteresting server. It just returns hello NationJS for every request that is made to it. Then we grab the Gun package and are going to set it up here. Now we could go on to use an HTTP server, be that an Express app or any other way you want to use it, but we don't need to. And Gun, similarly, we could use that object to start interacting with your graph database. But again, you don't need to. In the options here, you can pass a number of other options. You can check the documentation for that. But just a few important ones to mention. So we're going to pass in web, which is our HTTP server. The reason we need that is that Gun operates over WebSockets. The WebSocket protocol starts over HTTP with an upgrade header and is upgraded to a WebSocket connection. So Gun will connect onto that server, listening on the path Gun, and accept incoming connections there. Peers we're going to look at in a minute, but for now I'm just going to bypass that. And then verify. This method, or this block, allows you to verify incoming WebSocket connections and reject them based on whatever criteria that your app might have. for our purposes, I'm just going to log out a message so that we can see what's happening in the logs. I'm going to run, let's clear this out. I'm going to run this file. All right. Gun, by default, will log out a couple messages. You can see here this second one. By default, Gun will dump its data into a flat JSON file. This is great for testing, prototyping, building out your app, but it doesn't scale. So what you can also do for long-term storage is plug Gun into something like MongoDB or MySQL. There's a number of community-built adapters that allow you to plug it into any real storage backend that you want. But by default, it'll create a file called data.json, which we're going to expect to show up here. Here is a little application that I built in Vue. It's a pretty simple to-do app. Actually, here, let's not do that. I'm just going to leave this unconnected. So I have a Gun instance running on my browser. It's currently not connected up to any servers until I do the dropdown, and it gives me an option to sync up to one of these servers in our network. You can sync up to more than one, but for the purposes of the demo, I'm just doing one at a time. Now, without being synced up, Gun is a fully capable database that you can use to query your data, create a graph in your browser, get updates from it. All of that is fully functioning. When you connect up somewhere, all that means is now you're able to sync data with other Gun instances, which means that this is fully offline capable. Also on our client-side browser, it's going to dump its data into local storage so that it'll kind of persist between sessions or until that's cleared out. So let's put a little bit of data in here. It's pretty simple. We can complete the to-dos. Is that big enough? You can see it? The screen is so huge. All right, so this is pretty uninteresting. This is the sort of basic stuff that we do. So let's connect up and sync to our server. I've got 2 incognito mode Chrome instances here now, synced up, and why don't we just add a third for kicks? You can see this is syncing up now in real time. We can go ahead and delete them that way. All right. So at this point, I want to take a quick tour of our Vue code so you can get an idea of what's running on the front end. I used like a Vue generator webpack sort of setup to generate the scaffolding for Vue. I added in Gun, I'm importing it, and I'm instantiating it. Notice that I'm not connecting it to any peers here either, because we'll do that later when you toggle the dropdown. There is a Vue plugin that I wrote that allows you to integrate Vue and Gun together so that within your components you can reference Gun by doing this $Gun to access your database. We'll open here. Connector, that is our little dropdown. You can see it's got, these are actually just ports for the different servers running on my machine. When you switch that, it's going to run down here and call a this.gun.opt, which allows you to merge any options into your Gun instance that you didn't pass into your constructor. So then we're just going to add a peer there and say, hey, sync up in real time with that server. And it emits an event. This component here is responsible for our text input field. You can see it's pretty simple. This is all the kind of code responsible for writing a to-do into our graph. It's going to go ahead and create a node and put it into a set or that list of to-dos. When that happens, it's published in real time. And again, this code will be up and available if you want to check this out after the presentation. So we've got one gun instance running right now. What's really powerful in Gun is to actually create a network that is syncing in real time, storing the data in multiple places. So let's do that. So we're going to wire up a connection now to London as well. And all that is a Docker container running this script. So it's also really nothing fancy. It's just listening on a different port in a Docker container on my machine. Let me restart here. Refresh these guys. Connect one to Washington, one to London. What's going on here? I knew this, Sam, when you were saying real-time demos. No, those are both connected. Pretty sure I restarted, but let me just make sure I save the file. Oh, I know what's going on. Sorry. WebSockets is listening on Gun, not just the base path. All right. So that file's saved. Here we go. Let's try again. I did restart the server after I saved the file. So I'm just going to connect it to the wireless. I literally tested this just before the presentation and it was all working. Because I knew this was the piece. You would not believe how many cat images I cut out of my presentation. No typos, everything looks good. Right? Seriously, I will not be offended if you spot any typos. All right. I'm not going to spend much more time troubleshooting. The resolution on the screen here makes it extremely difficult to check your connection. What's going on? All right, so I'm just going to leave this off, and hopefully y'all trust me. You can test out this code on your own later. Not sure what's going on. So, all right. So we talked about what is Gun. We talked about a graph database. We talked a little bit about how Gun does offline first, which is to say every Gun instance, whether that's running in a browser, you can put it in a React Native application and run it natively. You can put it in just about anywhere that Node or JavaScript will run, Gun will run. Wherever it is, it's going to store its data locally and can be fully functioning, whether it's offline or online. The thing you gain when you're online is that you're going to get real-time updates. So if you lose a connection, it's going to come back on and sync up. How does Gun do real-time? It uses a publish-subscribe method. So this is all the code that you would need to publish and update. You grab a node, you put some data into that node. Gun takes care of publishing that out into your mesh network. And that's really all there is to say. Once it's published, Gun will distribute it through your network. On the other side, you just need to subscribe to updates to receive those updates in your graph. That code looks a little something like this. you would say .map, and then .on. So map would iterate over that list. .on subscribes to any changes, and then it starts streaming those changes into you. This is what it looks like when it is actually working to go through a network. As long as the network of gun servers is connected somehow, it can kind of bounce across those different peers, just shooting the data all through there. So speed it up a little bit to get a better idea how that looks. A few words about decentralization. So this is the same image we just saw before. And it's just representing what a decentralized system might look like. Instead of having a single master database, which is your source of truth that lives somewhere, maybe it's in a cluster of, in a Kubernetes cluster, or maybe you really just have a single server and a database, a database instance running on there. In this model, everywhere that Gun is running, it's a fully functioning database. Now, does that mean that your entire data set is downloaded for each instance? No, it's just going to grab the information it cares about and store it. This image here contrasts the two different approaches. One of the benefits of using a decentralized architecture like this is that you get data replication out of the box with Gun. One of the challenges that you'll note if you do build an app with Gun is that it's hard to stamp out your data. In this model, your data could be replicated in 6 different places. Some of those in devices that presumably your users are carrying around and you don't have access to. This is a good problem to have. It's hard to delete your data. I've had one idea that I just want to see if it will work and see if my demo will actually work here. So give me one quick second and we'll see if we can Jimmy rig this. Yeah, I just can't let it go. So instead of trying to get the server instances themselves connected together, I'm going to do it right from the client side code. One last try. Hey-oh! We have synchronization. All right, let's delete some stuff. There we go. Do it in front of my child. I hope she's not scarred for life. Man, remember that time when Dad spoke at NationJS? Oh. Anyway, all right. I'm not sure. I think it's something with the wireless network or what. But it does illustrate one point. As long as you can get these things connected together somehow over the network, you can synchronize your data across all the different Gun instances. Just happened to not look like I had planned. All right. So what can you do with Gun? One thing you can do is rapid prototyping. Maybe you think the graph data structure holds a lot of promise for your application, but you don't want to wire up a big solution like Neo4j or Janus Graph or a number of the other big instances. You just want to say, hey, can I throw together a quick Express app, use Gun as my database, and give graphs a try. And you can prototype something pretty quickly that way. So Gun is meant to run in the browser, be able to sync up to servers, and create a decentralized network, but you don't have to run it that way. You could just run it behind a REST API and have it function like your database layer. So that is one strong possibility. Anything that does real time, Gun would be great for. Even say something like a game engine. That's all I have for you guys. Thanks for coming out. My name is Spencer.